You ever get that creepy feeling that your phone is listening to you? Well, today, we're going to find out why that is. We are pulling back the curtain on something called surveillance capitalism to see what is really going on every single time you tap, click, and scroll.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll define what this new kind of capitalism even is. Then, we'll trace it all the way back to its origins with Google and Facebook. After that, we're going to look at the nuts and bolts of how it works, see how it's already shaping our world, and finally, ask the big question, what can we do to fight for our digital future?
All right, let's dive right into part one, a new kind of capitalism. And like it says right there, it is probably not what you're thinking. This goes so much deeper than just seeing a few targeted ads online. We're talking about a fundamental change in how our entire economy is starting to operate.
Let's start with a feeling I'm pretty sure we've all had. You know the one. You're chatting with a friend about, say, wanting a new pair of hiking boots, and just moments later, your social media feed is an absolute flood of ads for them. It feels like some kind of weird magic, or maybe something a little more unsettling. That feeling, that's a direct symptom of what we're talking about today. Well, there's a name for this whole phenomenon, and it was coined by Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff: surveillance capitalism. At its very core, it's an economic system that's built on collecting our personal data. But here's the critical twist. The goal isn't just to sell that data. The real goal is to use it to predict, and ultimately to control what we all do next.
And this right here really puts it all into perspective. You see, old-school industrial capitalism, it exploited nature to build physical products and factories. Surveillance capitalism, on the other hand, it exploits human nature, our experiences, our emotions, our behaviors, to create its product, predictions. The end goal isn't just to sell you a car, it's to sell advertisers the certainty of what you're going to do tomorrow.
So how in the world did we get here? Let's jump into our next section and find out. This whole thing wasn't some grand conspiracy from the start, it was what Zuboff calls a mutation, one that happened almost by accident inside two of the biggest companies on the planet. You know, it actually started out pretty small. Back in the early 2000s, Google was just trying to make its search ads a little better. In the process, they stumbled onto an absolute goldmine. The data users left behind, all your searches, your clicks, was the perfect fuel for targeting ads. That was the spark. By the mid-2000s, Google and this new company, Facebook, had turned that spark into a revolutionary new economic engine. And by the 2010s, that engine was running pretty much the entire digital world. And this was the absolute game changer they figured out. The old advertising model just wanted a second of your attention. But this new model, it realized that the data exhaust you leave behind, your digital footprint, was the real raw material. That data could be refined, kind of like crude oil, into something incredibly valuable, predictions about what you were going to do in the future.
Okay, so how does this prediction engine actually run? For this next part, we're going to pop the hood and look at the step-by-step process that turns your everyday life into data, and then turns that data into profit. So how do they do it? Well, Zuboff points to 4 key features. It all starts with step 1, an endless hunger for data extraction. This gets a legal green light through step 2, the new contracts. Yep, those super long terms of service nobody ever reads. Then they use step 3, personalization, to tailor everything to you, keeping you hooked and sharing even more. And finally, step 4, they run constant experiments on all of us, little A/B tests to figure out exactly how to influence our behavior. And where does all this data end up? It gets packaged into what Zuboff calls prediction products, which are then bought and sold on a totally new kind of stock market, behavioral futures markets. On this market, the commodity isn't oil or gold. The commodity is us, or to be more specific, a guarantee of what we'll do, think, or buy in the very near future.
This brings us to the most critical and honestly, the most chilling part of this whole story. Because the goal isn't just to predict what we're going to do, it's to control it. And this is the point where the system leaps out of the digital world and right into our real one.
Let's look at a case study that you might not expect at all, the mobile game phenomenon Pokémon Go. On the surface, it seemed like just some harmless fun, right? But underneath, it was a perfect demonstration of this new economic model in action. And some people saw it right away. At the absolute peak of the game's popularity, the film director Oliver Stone called it out for what it was. He realized that the real goal wasn't for players to catch Pokémon, but for the game to catch the players, and of course, all of their data. And boy, was he right. The permissions that the game required were just staggering. Sure, it wanted your location, that makes sense, but it also wanted access to your accounts, your photos, your network connections. It was a massive data gathering operation disguised as a fun little game. And it proved that companies could now herd people around in the physical world
just as easily as they could online.
Now let's turn to a much more infamous example. The Cambridge Analytica scandal was the moment the world saw how these exact same tools could be used not just for selling products, but for selling politics.
The playbook they used was pretty straightforward. First, you harvest the personal data from millions of Facebook users without their real consent. Next, you use that data to build detailed psychological profiles on them. And finally, you hit them with hyper-targeted ads designed to push their emotional buttons. This was the ultimate prediction product, using surveillance insights to try and guarantee an election outcome.
So after hearing all of that, the big question becomes, are we just trapped? Is this just how the world is now? Well, in our final section, we're going to look at the growing resistance and ask, is there a way out of this? And the good news is, no, we are not trapped. All around the world, awareness is growing. People and their governments are starting to wake up to the dangers here, and they're beginning to push back against this unchecked data grab.
The biggest example of this pushback is the GDPR in the European Union. These are really comprehensive data protection laws designed to give people actual control over their personal information. By enforcing strict rules about consent and how data can be used, the GDPR throws a pretty big wrench in the gears of the surveillance capitalism machine. Now, it doesn't stop it completely, but it definitely slows it down.
And that brings us to the final, incredibly powerful question from Shoshana Zuboff herself. This technology isn't going anywhere. The data is going to keep being created. So the crucial question we all have to answer is, who's going to be in control? Will we be the masters of this new world of information, or will we be its slaves? The fight for that future, it's happening right now. Thanks for joining me.